the environmentalists say. Go out and search for yourself. If you ever go down to Vancouver Island, go stop by and see them. And ask them. Ask them if you can go to their site. Look for yourself, examine, understand it, ask questions.
About 400 kilometers south of Prince Rupert, the waters surrounding northeastern Vancouver Island are home to the highest concentration of fish farms in British Columbia. There are 24 different farm leases in this area. Alert Bay is home to the Musqueam Salwadenu, in whose territory the farms are operating. Born and raised here, Brian Wadhams is one of the residents who have been noticing unusual changes in the marine environment since the farms began large-scale operation.
Take time to look at the impacts is what you need to do. Anybody that's interested in getting into this industry, they need to take time to do their homework. Come down to our territory, find out what's really going on, and then make a decision. Right now, you've got 6 million farmed salmon in the Broughton Archipelago that are there 365 days of the year. What happened, the DFO was going to have a commercial fishery in there because there was supposed to be a big abundance of pink salmon come back to the Broughton Archipelago. When the fishermen went in there was no fish. And they were saying, whoop, sorry, we got to close it down, there's no pinks. So this is what happened. So they didn't even know what happened to it, and I asked them that. I asked them, what does minimal impacts mean to you? 3.5 million pinks disappeared in the Broughton Archipelago last year. That's a major impact. There's an old trapper that lives in Thompson Sound, and he has a little tourism business there. And what he witnessed is that the Thompson bears, the Thompson Sound grizzlies, are starving there. And they were just skin and bone in there. Why is that? Because no pinks went in there to feed them. Not just the salmon in the ocean, but it's having effects on land as well.
To many communities, the coast is already seen as a natural farm, with abundance that can be harvested sustainably, if it is taken care of. For the people of Guilford Island, their commercial clam digging industry is their main source of employment and food in the winter months. Their ancestors practiced a type of shellfish aquaculture for thousands of years. They built and tended their own clam gardens, utilizing the natural coastal systems to maximize local food productivity. Today, several fish farms are located within a few kilometers of these traditional clam digging beaches. Locals are concerned about the possible link between recent changes in the clam beds and the amount of waste generated by the nearby fish farms. Each farm can hold over 1 million salmon in close quarters. The waste that passes through the nets includes fish feces, anti-fouling paints, pesticides, antibiotics, and other drugs.
What you're seeing is all these rocks here is a rock wall that was built by First Nations people. It goes along. There's about 300 of these beaches in the Broughton Archipelago. And for them to come up with a plan like this is unbelievable. So that I can collect these clams 5,000 years later. Isn't that amazing? That's what makes us think as leaders in our own communities how valuable it is to protect this for future generations. Sometimes we get caught up in the dollar value and not look at what we really have as a value. You can drive me into poverty, but as long as I have this, you'll never starve me. Science, you want to learn something, come and see First Nations people. It's called local knowledge.
That stinks.
There's another one there. That one's live.
There's nothing in there.
Yeah.
It's rank.
See, look, you sink in there 4 or 5 inches when you're walking, and it's all feces and feed meal and chemicals, biotics. It's supposed to be firm sand. You're not supposed to sink in like this. This was an excellent spot. No, nobody digs here. Everybody's too afraid.
It smells kind of like the sewer.
What's happening in the Broughton Archipelago right now is that every year 2 or 3 more beaches get shut down due to contamination, but they don't tell us what the contamination is. And for some strange reason, it's always when a farm is put in.
The meat's supposed to be green, not black on the meat on the inside. The meat on the inside of the body is supposed to be greenish color, but it's turning black. And everybody notices that now.
Yeah, it's mushy.
See, there it is. It's not firm like it used to be.
No.
This is a normal one on the left where we get the nice white shell. This is the one with the black, and we're seeing the changes here. We got to be really careful when we eat these things now. So what we'd like this government to do is please remove your farms from our farms. I thank our ancestors for thinking about this, you know. It's amazing how they preserved over time so that I can come here 5,000 years later and say, wow, thank you.
In the nearby community of Echo Bay lives Alex Morton, a biologist who has been working in the Broughton Archipelago for over 20 years.
3 winters ago, the commercial fishermen in my area phoned on the radio to say that they had extraterrestrials stuck to the eyeballs of their fish, and I didn't know what they were talking about. So I went down there and I found these arrowtooth sole, which are also called turbot. And up to 95% of them had these very unusual eye parasites that the fishermen had never seen before. I had never seen before either. So I go and sit on their boats and count how many of the fish should have these things. And it was almost every single one of them. So I began to write to scientists around the world. I said, is this normal? Is this normal? And they said, no, this is extremely high. It should occur in about 1 to 2% of the fish. But in this area, it's in the high 90s. Some days it's 100% of them. So I began to look through the literature. And at first I found nothing. I went to the Department of Fisheries and Oceans. They said, oh, it's normal, don't worry about it. But when you look through the literature, you get things like this: tumors, lesions, and eye parasite in flatfish. Marine parasites as pollution indicators, which tells you if you're getting lots of parasites, you're in a polluted environment. I'm getting reports from fishermen in other areas saying that they're seeing this and the lesions and the tumors in other areas where there's salmon farms. You know, the fish will only take so much. You cannot be subjecting them to an environment like this and say this industry has no impact.
Alex first moved here 20 years ago to study the wild orca. However, the focus of her work has since shifted. She now spends much of her time trying to determine the impacts the farms are having on the whale's habitat and their main food source, the wild salmon.
When you look out here, you know what? We're looking out at like 5 Serengeti plains stacked one on top of the other. So much life out here. You got your guys that are just off the bottom, and then you got your deep water, and then you got your mid-water, and then you got your surface. It's beyond what can happen on land.
In 2001, Alex noticed that the juvenile wild salmon of the Broughton were infested with loads of parasitic sea lice. While some lice are common on adult salmon, it was extremely rare for juveniles to carry high loads. Alex suspected that the young wild salmon were contracting the lethal loads of parasites from the nearby fish farms. The farms, she believed, were acting as a breeding ground for sea lice and disease. Based on her observations, she predicted there would be over a 90% decrease in the numbers of adult pinks returning to spawn in the fall of 2002. While the rest of the coast experienced good returns, millions of salmon failed to return to the Broughton Archipelago. It was one of the biggest collapses the coast had ever seen. The following year, 11 fish farms were emptied during the time when the young fish would be migrating by. The experiment seemed to work, and in 2003 the smolt sampled were healthy with fewer lice. The pink salmon seemed to be making a comeback. However, come the spring of 2004, the farms remain active, with a new generation of wild salmon heading out to sea. Alex's work is attracting more attention from the scientific community.
I'm a graduate student in mathematical and statistical biology at the University of Alberta. What we're doing is we're looking for juvenile pink and chum salmon here. But we're out here studying this because